Welcome to Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends, a podcast from Virtual Stage Lab.
Chers lovers of musicals, it is with deepest pride and greatest pleasure that we welcome you to our humble podcast. And now, we invite you to relax, pull up a chair, and ask yourself these three basic questions. Does it sing? Do I care? Why this show? Why now, mon frère? These three questions are the best when you decide, should I go there? Every show is a fight. It takes years to get it right. Is there conflict? Is there tension? Are the stakes too low to mention? First assess your milieu. Is there too much work to do? Will it bring the raison that it needs to bring? Nail down the atmospherics, then we'll craft some lyrics. Should it be? Do we care? Does it sing?
Okay, welcome back. This is Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends. Today, I'm going to do a couple of things connected to my guest. And my guest is Dick Scanlan. He'll be here in the other half of the episode. My friend and my colleague, and we work together on this. And before we get into all of that, I've made a list. I'm not going to do this all the time, but I was inspired by the fact that I'm having my friend Dick Scanlan on the show today. As I've said to him, you know, that song that you wrote is, for me, one of the best musical theater songs of the 21st century. And that made me think, what are my other favorite songs of the 21st century? Since the year 2000, we're a quarter way into this century. And I am talking about the song that Dick and Janine Tesori wrote for Thoroughly Modern Millie, the Act 2 curtain raiser, Forget About the Boy, which you can see on YouTube. If you go to the Tony Awards, YouTube, Thoroughly Modern Millie, or Forget About the Boy, it'll come up. And it's really worth a watch. It's just one of those purely joyful, witty, intelligent, and inspired moments just of writing and execution. And I mean, you'll be seeing Sutton Foster and Nathan is, really being brilliant. Just a great piece of musical theater. So that list is coming. You're really in for an incredible treat. Dick became not just my friend, but also, and my colleague, but a mentor and a teacher, a really, really important teacher for me about the craft and the life and the business and sort of everything in between. Just one of the smartest, best people I've ever met or known or had the privilege to work with. I was working on this and on Motown, for those of you not watching, which you should be watching because there are extra little Easter eggs, visual answers to things on the video. You should be definitely checking this out on YouTube, by the way. Just going to make a stop here. Go to David Goldsmith Lyrics, subscribe to Does It Sing, and watch it there. You can also watch it on Spotify. There'll be little extras for you. Visual delights. Anyway, or you know what? Listen to it on Apple. You're gonna have the best time. It's just fine. If you're here, it's because you're a music theater nerd and you wanna talk about things that are interesting to music theater writers, nerds, fans, and all that. I'm gonna keep working on that little intro. Anyway, so I was working on Motown. We had come to a point, I'd been on it for almost 2 years, and I had definitely outlived my usefulness with Barry Gordy. Like, I was still on the show, and I was going to be taking the show to Broadway, probably. But I had said everything I had to say and done everything I could do, and there was really nothing more I could do to move the needle, and the needle needed to be moved. So Dick came on and made a huge, significant impact to the show and the success of the show, and all of our lives that he touched with his presence and his talent. So he'll be here. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm definitely going to talk to him about Forget About the Boy, what the process was of creating that song, that moment, the whole show in particular. Very ingenious job, and I think really underappreciated what that assignment was for Janine Tesori and Dick Scanlan to make that really stage worthy and really worthy of the Tony Award that it won for Best Musical, but also in the crafting of that score, taking the songs from the movie, which were not theirs, and incorporating those and weaving those into a score of their own that was cohesive and varied and actually needed to transcend on the level of craft and talent what had already been working. And they did that. They did that over and over again. There's a really, what I would say is a glittering tune stack. There is quite a collection of great songs, one after the other, in Thoroughly Modern Millie. And, maybe one day it'll come back. We'll, I don't know. I can't say, but we'll maybe ask about that. Now, that led to this, which is I was going to put together my favorite 25 songs from the first 25 years of Broadway. And there's been a lot of great stuff. And if your favorite song is not on this list, doesn't mean it's not great. It doesn't mean I don't love it too. Just these are the ones that stuck out to me. Now, there were some drier years, so I couldn't come up with one for every year. There were also some years where there were some great things that I'm gonna, for me, put in like my honorable mention. But I came up with about 11 or 12 that I love. And we'll talk a little bit about what they are and why they are. And the first one was Forget About the Boy, which was 2002, I suppose, Thoroughly Modern Millie. But I want to just say before I get to that, and there's been a lot of gypsy content on my podcast, because there's going to be. But because it's the show that I come back to, apparently the algorithm in my house somehow knows that gypsy is it for me. Because for some reason I was on the Amazon, the only channel that worked in my office was Amazon Prime. I don't know why. I think it has something to do with the corporate overlord of it all. So anyway, so Jeff Bezos let me watch Amazon Prime on the TVs, and the Bette Midler Gypsy was right there. Why? I don't know, but there it was. And I went, ugh, okay. So I just clicked on it just right before I got on here with you guys. And I hadn't seen it since it came out, in the 90s. By the way, Elizabeth Moss of Mad Men is Baby Louise, and Lacey Chabert is Baby June. Yeah, and that's Elizabeth Moss. I was like looking at, and then I looked up on my IMDb, and indeed it was. She's quite good. She's actually probably too good for Baby Louise. But anyway, I just want to emphasize that this show on the writing level accomplishes what so few musicals actually do, which is create an authentic, intimate connection between the audience and the characters. It's just how the understanding of these characters' journeys is delineated in the book, in the lyrics, in the music, in such a, to say it's economical would be to suggest that that's the focus. Like I'm watching it thinking, oh, economical that is, which I suppose I am, but I'm also just actually really taken in by the understanding that you take away of who these people are. And as opposed to most of the time, you get the picture of the character, the representation of the emotion, rather than the actual emotion itself. And it's never a bad idea as a writer of musical theater to really study this piece. Never a bad idea, because you will find yourself having a different experience every time the more deeply you go into it. And this particular time, because I find I won't do too much on this, but I find Bette Midler's work in this to be in that earlier stage of her career where her appeal was more about the sort of the iconography and the sort of cartoonish representation of like this shtick that she had become very famous for. Like later, when I saw her in Dolly, for example, she broke my heart. I just couldn't believe how authentic every moment as an actor that she had on that stage as Dolly Levi was. That's in stark contrast for me to her Gypsy of 20, 30 years prior to that. With one exception, so far I've gotten to the end of Act One. I've gotten to the end of Everything's Coming Up Roses. The moment before she starts the her monologue, I'm used to people walking out, which by the way, I mean, what a moment. What a moment of writing. Just Arthur Lawrence, where he's taken that story and where he's taken these characters, and you really aren't aware of how invested you are in Louise. But very slyly, I mean, between Little Lamb, which kind of catches you a little off guard because at that moment, it's clearly Rose's story and Herbie's story, and the kids are just coming along for her ride. But by the end of Little Lamb, you really care about Louise. You do. Um, and there's a beautiful, we talk about the I Want song a lot, and in a way, every song is an I Want song, right? I mean, every song at its kernel needs to have the character is trying to accomplish something, which is just another way of saying they want something, and there's an obstacle. And how do they get over that obstacle? And to what degree do they get over that obstacle? And what are their strategies? And how do they succeed? Or how do they fail? Or how is it left open? And Little Lamb is such an interesting sort of offbeat kind of piece of material about these combinations of stuffed animals and real animals that these are her friends that she's identifying with. And as soon as you begin to wonder, well, what is it she want? I wonder how old I am. Why do you look so blue? Did somebody paint you like that? Or is it your birthday too? Incredible. You learn so much in such a little amount of time. This is why this is instructive. There can be no wasted time, especially in a lyric. I mean, there can never be any wasted time. You can't waste any time in a book. You really can't. You can get away with a little more. There's more latitude because it's not restricted to a rhythmic pattern or a musical flow, but there is a musical flow even in a scene. But wow, that's economic writing. And in that moment, you really care about her. And then when you see her later in Act One with Tulsa, and it's a song about Tulsa. Who's Tulsa? Barely knew who this guy was. And now he's singing the song. And the song itself has to be so great. But also one thing we realize, the more we watch these things is everything in a musical needs to operate on more than one level. The audience is taking in musical information, lyrical information, and story information. And within those three elements, there needs to also be conflict, tension, consonance, assonance. There needs to be other elements dramatically, narratively, musically going on. If the music is consonant and the lyrics are consonant, there has to be something in opposition to all of that consonance. Everybody's got the right to be happy. Now I'm doing Sondheim from Assassins. Don't stay mad. Life's not as bad as it seems. So clearly banal lyrics on purpose to cheery, banal music on purpose. Now, interesting in their own ways, so banal is not quite fair, but you understand I'm saying happy, happy. But what's the conflict? What's in opposition to all of that happy lyric, happy music? Well, the audience's foreknowledge that we're talking about assassinating a president. So the irony is writ large. It's very clear. The audience is receiving all of those levels at once. So back to Gypsy, when you're receiving all I need is the girl, you have to know without being told in the lyrics and without being told in the book, you have to understand that Louise is pining for Tulsa, that she's in love with Tulsa. You don't really know where Tulsa's at, but that's good. That's the mystery. If there's a love story, there should be some tension in the love story. Will they or won't they? Does he or doesn't he? Does she or doesn't she? We know she does. So we don't know where he is, but he's singing a song called All I Need Is the Girl. And what we see is Louise in love and projecting herself literally, physically, emotionally into that young man's life, into that character's life. I am that girl. All I need is the girl. All you need is me. She then literally gets up and starts dancing to his dream of dancing with this girl. It's so clear. And if they had written a song called, you know, Top Hat, White Tie, Tails, you could maybe you could put all the same dynamics in, but it's so much more powerful and so smart to make the song about all I need is the girl. Got my tweed pressed, got my best vest. All I need now is the girl. Got my striped tie, got my hopes high, got the time and the place, and I got rhythm. We'll throw back to it. George Gershwin, Ira Gershwin song. Now all I need's the girl to go with him. Sweet, sweet rhyme. If she'll just appear, we'll take this big town for a whirl. That's where we're going to girl. And if she'll say, my darling, I'm yours, I'll throw away my striped tie and my best pressed tweed. All I really need is the girl. Genius. So within the layers of storytelling that the title is giving you, we're also getting impeccable craftsmanship in the lyric writing. And we're also getting just delicious music, a delicious dance. This character we haven't really seen before, but he gets a spotlight that's delightful. And then we get the story where she comes in and dances with him. And so without explicitly stating any of this, we understand narratively who this young girl is and why we care about her. And boy, do we. It's really important to remember the way story and emotion get conveyed in a musical. It's really never on the surface. And yet the surface needs to be impeccable for any of it to work, because you'll be thrown out of all of it when it becomes one-dimensional and flat. And then inside being one-dimensional and flat is also not well crafted, doesn't sit on the ear well, isn't interesting enough to engage and maintain your attention. This is never a problem in the craftsmanship of the book, music, lyrics, and choreography of Gypsy. And by the time you get to the end of Act One, again, what I'm talking about with levels is sort of like what is like the granddaddy of this example, which is Everything's Coming Up Roses, which is the scene prior to it when everyone is at their worst. Everyone is at the bottom. Rose's star daughter, June, has left. And not only has she left, but she's left with the boy that Louise was in love with. So we get to experience Rose's devastation. We get to experience the character we really, really love and care about, Louise. This is so important. We really don't talk about this enough with this show. We really, really don't talk about how important, as the heart of the show, it is that we care about Louise, because we always think it's Mama Rose's show and we're following Mama Rose, and we are, but without our absolute, what we want is Louise to be happy. Like, we want her to find her happiness, her life, herself, her identity. I want to go back to my favorite lyric of all time and my favorite musical theater song of all time, which is connected to my favorite songs of the 21st century. My favorite theater song will always be If Mama Was Married, from Gypsy. It not only contains probably my favorite lyric of all time, Mama, please take our advice. We aren't the Lunts. I'm not Fanny Bryce. Mama, we'll buy you the rice, if only this once. You wouldn't think twice. I don't really have to say very much about that. It's really got everything. It's got your I want. It's got your internal rhyming. It's got your craft. It's got your history. It's got your specificity. I think the Lunts are still like, people kind of know who they are because of that lyric and that theater I'm pointing to, or Motown West, La Fontaine. Yeah, so that, and also the joy of that song, the musical theater joy of that song, the yearning of that song, and musically, that incredible, plaintive, childlike wail in harmony of Mama. It's perfect. You don't have to mess with it. You don't have to improve it. You don't have to riff on it. You don't have to do anything. Just sing it, and it works. Anyway, the moment at the end of Act One, the perfect narrative moment of everything is for naught. Everything has come to ashes. And Herbie is the one who says, this is the new beginning. We can now be a family. And Louise wants that. And we want that. Everyone wants that but Rose. Rose isn't even hearing it. And, Act Two could be, Rose and Herbie and Louise as a family, back in Nebraska or Seattle, and Herbie's selling candy. Now, that wouldn't make a great musical, but would make a great happy ending for the Hovicks. And instead, we get this incredible turn of phrase, this monologue that starts, I'm used to people walking out. Wow. She's not even responding to Herbie and Louise. I'm used to people walking out. And then they were watching her in horror as she turns and says, I'm apologizing to you, Louise. And the levels that this is existing on just in a scene where you have this business just destroying you. And basically you're saying, you're done. But there's something in you that says, no, I'm not done. I'm just beginning. And there's no stopping us this time. I had a dream, a wonderful dream. And she sings Everything's Coming Up Roses, which again is everybody's got the right to be happy 40 years or 35 years before. Again, math not my strong suit, so you have to check me on 55 to 91. Yeah, not bad, 36 years. Anyway, whenever Gypsy came out, there's nothing in the lyric that tips you off that there's any awareness in Rose's narrative of anything negative. It's all green lights for her. But it is a horror movie for her daughter and her man. And for us in the audience, we're experiencing all of those levels at once, and we're taking them all in, and they're all really clear. You have to always be asking yourself, is this existing on any level other than the surface? Because if it isn't, I'm not going to have the interest of the audience. The audience will be ahead of me and they'll be bored, in all likelihood. I mean, sometimes you get away with it. I mean, this is what I find so confounding about Les Mis, because so much about Les Mis for me is, I am singing about the thing that I'm singing about and nothing else. And this is what I mean, and I'm being very declamatory, and there are no levels to discern between what I'm saying and what I'm feeling, or what I'm saying and what you should be feeling, and somehow it worked. Now, it never worked for me, and I don't think I'm alone, but all of this is subjective, and I'm going to give you a list of songs that I love. And all of that will be subjective too. And there will be songs that you love that aren't on my list of my favorite songs. Doesn't mean I don't think they're great. Doesn't mean wouldn't love them too. Doesn't mean if you reminded me, I went, oh yeah, I should have put that on the list, because I probably should have. But that's what's coming. I'm going to do that. But I wanted to just kind of wrap up with a little bow, this Gypsy thing. This is what we strive for. We strive to create characters in economic ways that the audience is not aware of the economy, and they're not aware of the lack of economy. They're not aware of the amount of time it took to make you feel who these people were and care about them and their journeys. So always instructive to go back to Gypsy. I will always recommend that to anyone who wants to see, how do I do this? Look at, if you're a composer, look at that score. Look at the overture. Within the first 10 seconds, 15 seconds of that overture, we're in a 5/8. So, I mean, you know, we didn't just invent interesting music. Like, interesting music, way, way, way predated Julie Stein and Stephen Sondheim. Do you know that Stephen Sondheim had to actually explain to Julie Stein how to notate the whole note triplet figures that are in the choruses of Everything's Coming Up Roses? It's true, he did. He was trained by Milton Babbitt, who was a 20th century contemporary composer, and his music is really weird as shit. So, very sophisticated musical, even though it's considered one of the most commercially successful shows of all time. Those two things should never be mutually exclusive to me, and they certainly don't have to be. So the more you know, the more you know. That's going to tee up the next segment, which is going to be, I'm going to try and go through them quickly, and then on to Dick Scanlan right after this.
Mama, please take our advice. We aren't the lumps. I'm not Fanny Bryce. Mama, we'll buy you the rice. If only this once, you wouldn't think twice.
And we're back. Okay, so here comes my so far partial list of my favorite songs from the first 25 years of the 21st century. And by the way, send me your suggestions too. Comment on my YouTube page, and while you're there, subscribe, hit a like button, do all those things the algorithm loves. But do send me what your favorite sings are for the first 25 years of the 21st century, and I'll get you started, okay? And then we can talk about them. I'm just looking at my list. I've got 2 songs from Hamilton, and I've got 2 songs from The Band's Visit, of course. I have 2 Jason Robert Brown songs. Let's talk about the song from 2000 that most of you probably don't know. Unless you were a fan of Audra McDonald's way, way back in the day, around then, which of course probably most of you were, and you listened to her album. I think it was How Glory Goes, I think was the album. She sang a song on How Glory Goes called I Won't Mind by Jeff Blumenkrantz, wrote the music, and Annie Kessler and Libby Saines wrote the lyrics. This is probably my favorite song of like the first 5 years of the aughts. I loved this song so much that it was actually, as all great songs should do, it inspired me creatively. And when we were writing what was then Having It All, which is now Five Women in an Airport, when we were creating one of the characters, we actually named Lizzie after the character in this song. It was originally written for the musical The Other Franklin. The show dealt with the relationship between William Franklin and his father, Benjamin Franklin. Lizzie is wife to William Franklin, who is Benjamin Franklin's son. After years of desperately wanting a child, becoming pregnant, and ultimately miscarrying, she learns that she will never bear a child. She sings the song to her godson, her best friend's newborn, in the nursery, while everyone else is in the next room celebrating his christening. So we have a great situation for a song. Just setting that up. Just a great... That's a reason to sing. We're definitely going to care about this character if we do it right. I won't mind sitting by your cradle, singing to you softly far into the night. It's a beautiful flowing out of imagery and meter. I won't mind playing peekaboo for hours to see that look of wonder, wonder, and delight. Lovely, very specific, but also appropriate to the character, not anachronistic to the time. Things you would be doing with baby. Soon they'll be asking, where is baby's nose? Where is baby's shoe? Where is baby's hat? Clever little boy, they'll say, Lizzie taught him that. So I'm learning the connection that she has, the personal connection that she has with this baby and this baby's development, this baby's growing up. Then there's a second verse. which will match the first. I won't mind reading you a story, quacking like a duck, chirping like a bird. Jeff has to adjust some of that melody there, but it's all flowing out very naturally. So his need to not match softly with duck from verse to verse is what that accomplishes is it allows us to feel a slight variation, which keeps us interested, as opposed to such a variation and such a departure that it leaves us aimless and confused. We're not confused, especially because we're continuing this theme. In the first verse, games you play. In the second verse, animals. We're bringing in quacking like a duck and chirping like a bird. I won't mind when you ask me to repeat it till you can say it with me, knowing every word. Again, I'm letting this flow out. These lyrics are, beautifully crafted. The prosody is perfect. The rhyming is clean. The imagery is fresh or fresh enough. You needn't worry if there's chocolate on your hands, jelly on your face, porridge on my skirt. So this connects with soon they'll be asking, where is baby's nose? Where is baby's shoe? Where is baby's hat? Just beautiful craft here, connecting rhythmically from verse to verse. Porridge on my skirt, giving us some of that feeling of the time that we're in. You would obviously not write that for a contemporary character, but it does set you in the 1700s in America very comfortably, which is helpful. You should take advantage of those opportunities when you have them and the story lent them. Skirt is the rhyme we're heading toward. Run to me and I'll be there to hold you when you hurt. Well, that's really moving. Then back to them. They'll say Auntie Lizzie can't sing no. They'll say Auntie Lizzie's spoiled. They'll say Auntie Lizzie's wrapped around your finger.
They'll say Auntie Lizzie's wrapped around your finger.
I'll say, yes, it's true.
Yes, it's true.
Sweet story. Then we're back to the verse.
I won't mind knowing that your mother showers you with kisses, bakes your favorite bread.
I won't mind knowing that your mother showers you with kisses, bakes your favorite bread. I won't mind when I see your father lift you and swing you to his shoulders, high above my head. They may be busy. I can take you skating. I can take you sledding, flying down the hill. Again, we're matching up with where is baby's nose? Where is baby's shoe? Where is baby's hat? We're matching up with chocolate on your hands, jelly on your face, porridge on my skirt. We are now in they may be busy. I can take you skating. I can take you sledding, flying down the hill. If they won't build a snowman, Auntie Lizzie will. They'll say Auntie Lizzie holds too tight. They'll say Auntie Lizzie can't let go. They'll say Auntie Lizzie's really not your aunt anyway. You'll say, no, that isn't so.
They'll say Auntie Lizzie holds too tight. They'll say Auntie Lizzie can't let go. They'll say Auntie Lizzie's really not your aunt anyway. You'll say, no, that isn't so.
So she's connecting to this baby. She's connecting to the future that they will have. And she's also entrenched in her tragedy, in her sorrow. This is what I'm saying about there have to be levels going on. So on the surface, she's singing this very delicate, very beautiful, happy on the surface song to this godchild, while knowing she will never have children of her own. And projecting about how the dream is all going to come true. The other thing about the songs in Gypsy, when you know the story, even when you kind of think you know the story, a song like You'll Never Get Away From Me, you know it's going to end tragically because it's been seeded in the story. It makes the song so much more powerful when those seeds are planted underneath that garden. You'll say, no, that isn't so. The music then allows an extra moment, and they just felt this. we need to have a moment. We can't just go right back into the next verse. So Jeff gives us a little bit of that music. So it becomes more intimate. In my heart, I will keep a secret, foolish little secret, hidden from the rest. In my dream, you're my own, my very own, and I blanket you with love as I hold you to my breast.
I dream you're my own, my very own, and I blanket you with love as I hold you to my breast.
And then the music goes on without her. Which is a technique I recommend. Jason uses it in Almost Real from Bridges in Madison County. He's created this arc of a melody, this beautiful kind of Italianate, operatic, aria type melody. And then as she sings it, I think by the third time she gets to it, the emotion is it's actually too devastating for her to accomplish that in that moment. So he allows it to go on without her while she just sings one note. That's all she can manage, the same note over and over again. Very similar moment here. You'll hear it in the music. So Jeff lets that go by. Bum, 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 bum.
Lizzie, he's not yours. Lizzie, in his life, your part is very small. But if one day a toy should break, or maybe plain patty cake, you call me Mama by mistake, I won't mind at all.
Come on, guys. Now, I'm breaking a rule by starting with this song because I'm really going to try to adhere to, it was either performed on Broadway, performed off Broadway. But that piece of material, that piece of musical theater material, not a pop song, definitely written for a specific character in a specific time frame and a specific period. You don't have to be Audra McDonald to make that song brilliant. That is perfection. So kudos to Jeff Blumenkrantz. Quite a brilliant, not just actor, performer, but composer. Annie Kessler and Libby Saines, that doesn't get any better than that work. So this week I got to the first of my favorite songs of the 21st century. I'll be bringing that back, obviously. Every week, I suppose, as a feature, I'll try to get at least one of them in. That's this week's. And now we're going to be, after this message, in for a treat with my friend, Dick Scanlan.
Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends? We'll be right back. Welcome back to Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends.
And we're back. My interview with Dick Scanlan and this first part with IWontMind is going to be the Angels in America of podcast episode. So I'm going to split it into two parts. Next week's episode will be the aforementioned promised breakdown of Forget About the Boy and all things Thoroughly Modern Millie. And you will also hear the complete bio of Dick Scanlan's. I'm not going to get into that today. I'm going to get right into the first part of my interview with Dick Scanlan, which you're going to love. And then come back next week for part two and the nerdy breakdown of Forget About the Boy. Here we go with Dick Scanlan, part one. Dick Scanlan, welcome to Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends.
Thank you. It's good to be here, David.
Thank you for being one of my friends.
Thank you for being one of my friends. I don't really, as you, I think, know from working with me, one of the few things I don't like about show business is I'm not interested in the press part of it. Like, obviously, I do it and whatnot. I'm interviewed. If I'm doing something, I'll do it. It's not very enjoyable for me, partially because I used to be a journalist. So It's just like I'm so aware the poor person's going to have to go home and listen to the tape of me gassing on and figure out how to turn that into an article. But I always liked radio interviews. That was the one exception. I've always liked doing radio interviews, and podcasts are similar. So I actually find it a very nice form in which to have a conversation about whatever. But yeah, I much prefer to television or print journalism.
Well,
but I don't listen to any podcasts.
Oh, interesting.
I listen to yours.
Well, that's what I think.
I've only ever listened to a podcast when I'm driving with my son.
Right.
And Andrew will listen to them, and then I'll listen to them with him. Right.
Do you think Andrew will be interested in listening to a podcast about the process of writing music theater songs?
No.
Well, sorry, Andrew.
No,
I've got bad news for you on this trip. So anyway,
that's not his area of interest.
So usually I would just dive into the business at hand, which I will get to, but I just thought, since you and I have worked together a couple of times at least, maybe we should just like do a little bit about how we met, how we're friends, Motown, Invisible Thread, which happened to be the two posters right behind me.
Oh, that's really weird. Yeah, there they are. Yes,
that's
I
where they live.
Those.
That's where they live.
The Invisible Thread poster, if I remember correctly, is sort of baffling. It had nothing to do with the show. It was some strange photo shoot that had no relationship to the show in any way, shape, or form. The Motown poster was always really fun. I mean, you've got the logo of the label, which is so, dreamily iconic, and they did good art on Motown, is my memory.
They did. Well, we got it to a point where someone was willing to spend the time and resource to actually do a thing.
Yes, indeed. So we were the consultants for Barry Gordy, and I think we were called script consultants. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were script consultants. That was our official title. But I remember us.
And then on Invisible Thread, I was a creative consultant.
I think your title was artistic consultant, and mine was script consultant, I think.
It's, sitting in the room and talking and, trying to craft story in a theatrically satisfying way,
And we didn't actually have our hands in Invisible Thread. That was really Matt and Griff. Like we were definitely in the room having those conversations all the time. But on Motown, we were at the Westway Diner, until 2 a.m, and then we would go back to the hotel room, or they were putting me up in some room somewhere, and we'd go back there, and we definitely had our hands in that one.
We did a lot of work on it, and it was a great experience. It really was. I loved it.
It was a great experience.
Loved it, actually.
And when you came on, it really became a magnificent experience, and that's just what I remember. That we were definitely, I'd been on it for a while, and Mr. Gordy was absolutely, whether he knew it or not, or would say it or not, was done with me. Like I had no more ability to impact any decisions that he was making, we really needed someone to come in and breathe life into that operation so that it could go we were in the 7th inning, and we needed a relief pitcher to come in and finish the game with a win, and you were the perfect casting for that role. In every way, you first of all, you came in with an encyclopedic knowledge of Motown, which I had only been developing through the course of working on it. And you walked in the door with it, and I also remember that your brain was such that you were able to keep 2 or 3 competing storylines in your head, and where they had been before, where they might go, and you were able to sort of parse the pros and cons of each direction so quickly and so clearly. It was quite dazzling, and I learned a lot from you about how important it is to be prepared when you walk into the room, and to just breathe and calmly know your shit before you started to talk. Because there was never a time when words were coming out of your mouth that they weren't supported by a lot of thought and a lot of care, and it was transformative in the experience. And I'm absolutely convinced that it's the reason why wherever Motown played, wherever it plays all over the world, it made its money back. It was never the show necessarily that you or I would have written had we been left to our own devices, but it was the show that Mr. Gordy wanted, which I think we're both very proud of. And it made its money back for all its investors, which I think was not a foregone conclusion, and which is something that I think we're also very proud of.
It was, I knew the show was happening, and I was just at home thinking it's so weird that I'm not working on that show. I'm a Motown fanatic, and I write musical theater, and I had become, to celebrate its 10th anniversary, although it actually came out in 1970, and Motown, I think, started in 1958, was when they actually incorporated. So, but they put out the Motown Story, which was a 5-album set, which I got, I think, for my 10th birthday. And that was a very extravagant gift. It was 5 albums. So, and it cost 5 times what an album cost then. But it came with a booklet, and the booklet had a lot of photos of the early years and like a 1-page story of how Motown started. And I remember at 10, reading that and being really at that age aware of what an unusual and inspiring narrative it was. This one man's dream, this black guy in Detroit who had this dream, and in a very quick time turned the dream into a worldwide recognized and respected brand. And then as I got older, into my teen years, I began to understand the way that intersected with the civil rights movement. I don't think at 10 I had that consciousness at all. But by the time I was 15 or 16, I was like, wow, Motown actually, and it really, because I would think of myself at 7 years old, wanting to be a Supreme or wanting to, have sex with one of the Temptations or whatever it was. It was a little kid, dreaming of, positive, desirable, fabulous people who happened to be black. And there was and the color of it all wasn't any obstacle to my to me. So I think I just saw such an opportunity in the show to dramatize all that. And when I saw the first version of the script I saw, which was very long and had a lot of stuff in it that I thought it didn't have, but that it did have, and it was and also to some degree that's in Barry's memoirs.
Absolutely.
To Be
That's
Loved.
what we started with,
That's right. And so I saw that ultimately the basic ideas that he wanted to dramatize were the ideas that I thought were the right ideas to dramatize. And I thought, I can help with this because I've got some skills that he doesn't possess because he's never written for the theater. And we're aligned about what the basic ideas should be. So that it was just a great experience.
Was there a moment, because as I've mentioned, this is a podcast about process for, music theater writers, nerds, and fans. Is there a moment that sticks out for you in the process of writing, either, you and me in the room, you and me in the room with Barry, you and me in the room with previews? Is there a moment that sticks out in terms of just like, oh, there was a lesson there in the process?
Oh yeah, yes, it's
what
what
sticks out for you.
Curious. You were there. It was early on. We were out in LA working with Barry, and I suggested something. I don't remember. It would have been the first week, David, that we were working all together. And I had been brought in by Kevin McCollum, the producer. That's how Barry had come to know me. I'd actually met Barry a few years before through Kevin McCollum at a Tony Award ball after the Tony Awards. At any rate, I suggested something, and Barry got a very dark look on his face, and was like, Kevin McCollum suggested that. I was like, oh. And it became very clear for the rest of that meeting that the narrative in his head was that I was, there as a ringer to get Kevin's ideas in the room. It had literally just been a coincidence because, as you know, I was pretty rigorous about not, about being really loyal to both of them, actually, but not becoming a go-between. I had no interest in being a go-between. But he really dissociated and boy didn't trust me for the rest of that meeting. So that night, I actually had a little bit difficulty sleeping, which, as you know, I really never do. I sleep very, very well. But I couldn't, because I kept thinking, well, what is, who do I work for? And I came up with an answer. And the next morning I went in, and you were there. We were in the dining room.
Oh, I'll never forget this.
And I said, before we start, can I just say something? I had a difficult time sleeping last night because I had a question in my brain, which is, who do I work for? I've been brought into this process by Kevin McCollum, one of the leading producers in my industry and a dear old friend. And yet I'm here to consult with and ultimately to serve you, who's been a hero of mine since I was a child, and started this, record company that, literally shaped my aesthetic. And I'm asking myself, who do I work for, you or Kevin? And Barry said, I'd be very interested in the answer to that question. And I said, the answer is neither. I work for the God of Story. I went to work for the God of Story in 1988, and I have worked for the God of Story ever since. That is who I serve. I serve story. And if that doesn't work for you, I'm not the guy for you. I mean, I am only interested in how to tell this story the best way we can. And Barry said, I like that answer. And we moved on.
It's a great answer, and I'm so glad I asked the question, and I'm so glad that that's the response, because I not only absolutely remember every beat of that story, but I've used it ever since. And not just not that I haven't retold that story, because I believe I have, but also I use it as a basic tenet when I go into a room now, as a writer, as a director. I say, we're here to serve the story. I'm here to serve the story. That's the boss. The boss is the story. Now, similarly,
right.
The show is the story. The show is the boss. We are. This is a collaborative art form. So, it's not quite a dictatorship. There's a director. There's hierarchies of who gets how much say. But ultimately, my loyalty is to the story and to the show, and because they are inextricably linked in their success or failure. The other thing I learned from you that day, and consistently from you, is just how to sort of stand in the truth of your own convictions fearlessly, even if it means this is your last day. For you to, and I think you were very consistent in that way, not in a recalcitrant way or a combative way, but just like the very notion of, this is my truth. If that doesn't comport with your truth and is unsustainable for you, then I'm not the right person for you. That to me is a very powerful position to operate from, and a very courageous one. You can't be in a state of panic, fear, or desperation, and make that statement. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of my interview with Dick Scanlan. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and come back next week for part 2. Have a great week. Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends is a production of Virtual Stage Lab. Virtual Stage Lab was founded by Paul Gordon and David Goldsmith to create film captures of original musicals and plays to democratize how theater gets developed, seen, produced, and licensed for production. If you have a particular song, show, or story idea from a musical that you'd like to have David discuss, break down, and analyze whether or not it sings, please contact our Director of Marketing, Melody Munitz, at virtualstagelab@gmail.com. For more information and our catalog of original projects by David Goldsmith, Jane Eyre's Paul Gordon, Disney and 5 Women at an Airport's John Cavanaugh, and others, go to www.virtualstagelab.com. Main title parody lyrics written and performed by David Goldsmith. End title music by Paul Gordon from the Gordon and Goldsmith Musical, My Improbable Sisters, starring Jenna Lee Rosen and Tony Award nominee Jasmine Amy Rogers, now available to stream for free on the Virtual Stage Lab page on YouTube. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe to whichever platform you're listening on, especially the David Goldsmith Lyrics page on YouTube. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the community. This has been Does It Sing with David Goldsmith and Friends. David.
Doesn't have a friend.
Oh, come on, Mom.